everything I do.
Yeah, I've got this massive cataract in one eye, so I squint now. Feel like bloody Long John Silver.
You're still my guy, Ray. All right. I think you can probably see that we're going live. Okay. Go ahead, Nicole.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Today, as most of you know, we are having a Zoom conversation and we are featuring the amazing Meso warriors, Mavis and Ray Nye. Mavis and Ray have been members of the ADAO community for over 10 years now. And we are very excited to have them on today. Before we start, we're going to get through some housekeeping. We are asking that everyone please mute yourselves. So that's down at the bottom left, and you just click and mute. If you have any questions, there's a chat function in the middle bar on the bottom. Just type them in. Make sure they're either going to me, Nicole, or just to everyone. We will get to those questions at the end of the session. Linda will ask and Mavis and Ray will answer. And I think that's it. So now we're going to pass off to Linda, who I'm sure most of you know, but Linda is the co-founder of the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization.
Thank you, Nicole. Nicole is one of our fabulous interns who just exceeds everything that she does. She's just really terrific. So yes, we're going to have a conversation with Mavis and Ray for about 45 minutes-ish. And then you'll have time to ask questions. It's a very unique conversation because it's so informal and we're all friends, so which makes it really lovely. So we'll have a casual feeling. Today, we're joined by some patients, some caregivers, some public health advocates, and some activists like Toby, who I think is joining, who cares about asbestos in schools from Canada. And before I get going, I just wanted to make sure that we give a thank you to the people that make our work possible. We have a plethora of volunteers, very dedicated volunteers and sponsors. So I want to just briefly thank those who allow us to work nationally and internationally to prevent exposure to eliminate all asbestos-caused diseases. I want to first start by thanking our platinum sponsor, Simmons Hanley Conroy, who generously give to ADAO. We have the American Federation of Teachers and Motley Rice as gold sponsors. And for silver sponsors, we have Early, Lucarelli, Sweeney, and Meisenkoten, Omaze, and also Whites and Luxembourg. Our bronze sponsor is a union group, and they're very strong with their stories and their work, and they come in at the bronze level. ADAO does not make any legal referrals. We are an independent nonprofit working on education, advocacy, and community to obviously prevent all asbestos-caused diseases. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And of course, you know, we do this and we, as ADAO, let's see, hopefully we can get to this. A lot of people who do Zoom conversations have a technical crew. And obviously you can see we do not have a technical crew. We just have us, right, Mavis and Ray?
Yeah.
Cool. So I would like now, Nicole, do you have a full view of everyone? Is everybody?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great. Because I want to make sure that Mavis and Ray's photograph shows up. So I'm going to take the screens off for some, and we're going to go into our conversation. I am so delighted to have this opportunity to talk to some dear friends and to share their story about education and inspiration. And I think Mavis and Ray, for me, are probably two people who have done outside the ordinary. They have done the extraordinary. So Mavis and Ray, why don't you introduce yourselves? And Mavis, you can go first because we're very formal. You live in the UK and you have proper etiquette. You should go first, followed by Ray. Is that okay, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll follow the Iron Lady.
So I'm Mavis Nye. I've had mesothelioma since 2009, and I'm still here.
I'm Ray Nye. I just follow whatever Mavis asked me to do and get on with it. Who would argue with Mavis?
Well, that's true. Not too many people would argue. So Mavis and Ray live in a lovely village. Do you call it a village? It's in Kent.
Yeah, it is in Kent. Yeah, it's on the outskirts of a town, which is Whitstable.
And it's so lovely coming from Los Angeles. When I had the wonderful opportunity of taking the train down, I got to visit you in your really lovely town where they have oysters and right on the water's edge. Let's step back in time because you two share a beautiful love story. So Ray, tell me about when you saw that girl Mavis for the first time. What did you think? And where were you and how old were you?
The first time I recall meeting Mavis was apparently we'd all met up in the local youth group a few days before, and the plan was we were all going to meet up again and play tennis. Now, I'd never played tennis in my life, but there was going to be some girls involved, so me and my friend went along. We all got paired off. I don't know why or how that happened, really. It was just something that did happen. And I got paired off with Mavis to play tennis. And at the end of the evening, I mean, I'd got to this venue on my motorbike, but I only had L plates at the time, so I wasn't allowed to carry anybody on the back. So going home with Mavis that evening, I had to push this ruddy motorbike for miles alongside of her. And when I actually got her home, we were outside chatting for a few minutes, and I said, "What are you doing tomorrow? Would you like to go to the pictures tomorrow?" And she said, "Yeah, that's fine. Okay." So that's what we did. And then when we came back from the pictures the following night, I said, "What are you doing tomorrow? There's a nice show on at the local Empire Theatre. Would you like to go there?" She said, "Yeah, that sounds good to me." So the following evening, when we were walking up and we arrived at the theatre, I, as a gentleman, said, "Well, you wait here and I'll go in and get the tickets." But I was absolutely gobsmacked because Mavis said, "There's no need for that. I came up this afternoon and I've already got the tickets." Now that to me was just, that blew me away, and I was thinking, got a good one here.
She's got money.
Yeah, she's got money. But what I wasn't aware of at the time, that she was only working part-time in her uncle's shop because she was still at college, which made it even more amazing. And just a few weeks ago, we celebrated 63 years together and celebrated our 60th wedding anniversary. There's an awful lot gone on between that game of tennis and today, I can assure you.
And you haven't got time to hear it all.
I've heard some of it. That's why I wanted you to touch on it, because from what you have shared, Mavis and Ray, you knew you were in love with each other, crazy in love, like straight away. So you have this very sweet, pure love. Okay, Mavis, when you first saw Ray on the tennis courts, what did you think?
Actually, it's because he was in the youth club when I met him on the Wednesday, and he was playing the piano. I thought, oh, I like him, and I went up and I went fingers over onto the keyboard and played with him, and that was it. I've been by his side ever since, and
And you're so dear with each other. It gives me great joy because I've had the opportunity to meet up with you in England and see you in good times and bad times and funny times and all of it. And your love is unwavering, which is really dear. Okay, so this is where that gets kind of hard, but I know people, because there's some people here who are patients, and things have changed a lot, Mavis, since you were diagnosed. But why don't we talk about what your first symptoms that led to a diagnosis? Because I think it's also important to share. Ray, you've expressed to me at times where you felt maybe this is me summarizing your feelings, guilty or sad that Mavis was exposed to asbestos because you worked around asbestos, if that's right. So Mavis, why don't you take us back to when you had, what were your first symptoms and when did you have them?
Right. So we'd been to Spain. We were retired. We've got a motorhome. We travelled to Spain to my son, and we had a lovely time there. But when we gradually, as I was walking into Benidorm and going back up the hill to La Nucia,
which was 4 miles.
yeah, 4 miles, gradually I found I couldn't get up the whole hill, and I kept resting on the wall, lower and lower. Anyway, we came back to the UK, and I'd already been to the doctors and and he sent me for an X-ray because he was worried that I'd a trapped ulnar nerve. But I came from the doctors and came home, but I couldn't. I went up to vote and I couldn't breathe, just could not breathe. And so I came back home. But just as I got home, the phone's going from the doctor, and he said to me, "Get to A&E. We've seen a huge mass, and we're a bit worried about you. There's a bed being booked." So we rushed to A&E, and they drained 7 litres of fluid off me. So my lung had completely collapsed with that weight. And that's how this all started.
And Ray, you must have been scared at that time. You didn't know what was happening to Mavis. And then Mavis, when they drained the fluid, how long did it take from the time you had those symptoms to the time they actually did a diagnosis? And what was the year?
It's 2009.
It was just over a week when it was in hospital.
Yeah, they did a lot of tests on that fluid, and they then said it was definitely mesothelioma, and you'll have about 3 months to live. He went to me, and so that's how it all started. Yeah.
Well, that's how a lot of us are told that we have mesothelioma. And sometimes when they tap the fluid and they test it, you get a false negative. That's happened to Alan. And for those people who don't know me, my husband had mesothelioma and was diagnosed in 2003 and passed away in 2006. So Mavis, you've always been carrying the torch of hope, of inspiration, of fierce fighting. And Ray, you stand right by her side, right? I mean, the two of you, it does take a village, and you have a lovely family. So from the time you're diagnosed, then you're learning now, I suspect, when they say mesothelioma, like when I heard it for the first time, I couldn't pronounce it. I had never heard of it. And it's not till I go home and I type it in the computer do I find out that Alan might have a cancer caused from asbestos. So what was your learning curve like from the time you heard that you had fluid on your lungs and you might have mesothelioma? What were you thinking and feeling, and how did you get the good care that you needed?
Right. So really, I couldn't say the word. It took me months to be able to say it properly. And I knew that Ray had worked with asbestos. We knew that in the dockyard, and gradually we were losing friends. But we just thought it was lung cancer. Never did we know it was mesothelioma, a special cancer for that asbestos. So I just scared, I suppose, really, and yet I just numb. And I thought, I said to the doctor, right, I'm going to fight this. And all they had there was chemo. And so I took 4 years of chemo, and immunotherapy was just coming in. I knew about it. It was in the US, and I kept saying to the doctors, when is there going to be a trial here? And the doctor says, sorry, Mavis, it's not here yet. And every time, because I joined the local hospital as a patient carer, I went into meetings, so I wanted to be in the know. And he kept saying to me, sorry, there's nothing here yet, nothing here. Then Dean Fennell said to me, there is a trial, it is at the Royal Marsden. I think it would be suited to you. So would you get in contact with the Royal Marsden? Which I did do. And this is how I was the first patient here in the UK with 2 others to go on immunotherapy. But the other 2, I'm afraid, passed away. So that left me out front. and I'm now the longest living patient in the UK on immunotherapy. So they're learning from me.
And I know you're quite proud. You share what it's like going through different therapies and the anxiety that both you and Ray feel. And when Alan was sick, surgery, doing an extrapleural pneumonectomy was actually the standard of care then. And now as we look back, there's less EPPs done and more PDs where they strip off the lining around the lung. And there's some patients here, you know, listening to your story. And I think it's really important for us as warriors that every story is unique and different, and we're not prescribing any medicine. And if anything, we've learned the hard way that we have to be our own personal best advocates with our physicians. And sometimes we have a spouse like Ray who can go along, because it does take a team. It's a hard diagnosis and the treatment is difficult, but having a partner that also understands it can run interference for you, Mavis, I think has been really important. So Ray, I think you've been very honest about sharing. When did you work with asbestos? What did you do? And did you ever know asbestos could cause the diseases that you now know about?
My first contact with this asbestos was when I was an apprentice back in 1953. I was an apprentice in the Royal Naval Shipyard here at in Chatham, and I was a shipwright, and it was not my trade to deal with asbestos. That was a different trade altogether. But unfortunately, when the ship's undergoing a refit and you've got gangs of what they called caulkers who used to go on board ship with their compressed air lines and pneumatic hammers, chipping this asbestos off the boilers and bulkheads and ripping out all the electrical gear. This asbestos was laying about on the floor, being broken up, stood on, kicked about, raising dust in this confined ship. So it was inevitable and impossible to ignore it. We were surrounded with it. And at the end of the day, it would be in my hair, on my clothes, on the clothes that I'd had to hang on a hook somewhere all day long. And when I got out of my overalls and put my outdoor clothes back on to go home, I would take this dust home. And when I was meeting Mavis, sometimes at lunchtime I would sneak off on my bike to go and find her, and I'd be covered in this dust. So I was giving this dust to Mavis then. That was how I came in contact with it.
So just by being married and Mavis doing your clothing, she was exposed, and that's not uncommon, sadly. We call that either secondary or take-home exposure. And I know patients who have hugged their parent, and the parent had asbestos on their clothing. So it's no fault of yours, it's the fault of the corporations, because for over 100 years, these corporations have known that asbestos exposure would cause suffering and disease and death, and they continue to use it. And unfortunately, they hid that secret. So as a result of Mavis's diagnosis and your knowledge, you endured treatment, and it's not easy to watch someone you love go through chemotherapy. It's a hard thing, Ray, and you're always there.
You get that horrible guilt feeling from the moment that doctor said to her, "You have mesothelioma, and approximately 3 months to go home and put your affairs in order." I left that hospital and went home by bus, and it was the school bus, and it was packed with kids screaming, fighting, rolling and jumping about. But my mind was a blank to all that. I don't even remember that. All I could think of at that time was, this is my fault. I've given this to Mavis. I'm responsible for her death sentence. And I tell you what, that's been sitting on my shoulders from that day till this. It never goes away. Every time I see her, every day. It's my fault.
If I was there, I'd put red lipstick on your lips right now and I would kiss you. It's not your fault. It's the fault of the corporations who lied. It's
Yeah.
their fault. It is not. What's that, Miss Mavis?
I said, I keep telling him that it's not his fault. It's
No.
the government at the time being so damn greedy that they didn't ban it.
No, you're right. We have someone from Rochdale on this call, and that was a city obviously that used with Turner and Newell had a factory. Many people work there, and there were women working in the textile industry, and they knew, Ray. So it's not your fault at all. So release that. I understand how you feel, but you know from my heart and from the knowledge I have in Mavis, it's not your fault. It's the corporations. Worse yet, it still continues in the United States. And we'll get to that later on. But you and Mavis have been hugely helpful to the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, ADAO, in trying to help move our policy to get closer to where you are, where you have a ban. Let's talk about, there were some warriors that we've worked with in the past. Everyone just fills our heart with joy, but a little bit of sadness. Debbie Brewer was quite a remarkable, spunky, fierce girl. And in the very beginning, Debbie was going to Germany, as I recall, trying to get treatment. So when you live in the UK, you're lucky you have a national healthcare system. In the United States, there's some people that don't have access and can't afford this, the kind of chemotherapy and treatment that you've had, which is very sad to see somebody not be able to afford good care. So you've had some dark times, Mavis. There was a treatment once, I can't remember which one it was, because after 11 years, you've been on many, that was really toxic to you. So can you tell us, as a patient, you've learned so much in 11 years. What have you learned about some of your treatments, and how can you help somebody who's listening today?
It was chemotherapy, actually. I'd had it for 4 years, and gradually I became so very, very toxic, and I was dying. That was 4 years of that, and I was dying. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand upright. I was falling over, even with the poor little dog taking it for a walk. I'd fall over out there, and he'd sit there and wait till I got up again. I smashed my face in one day, and the lady picked me up, so I was so toxic, it was got right to my nerves. And yet immunotherapy, within 4 sessions of infusions, really, I was back up again. I was upright and I was walking again. So it, to me, was a miracle drug. But to some people it isn't. It's not everybody. And they realise it's down to your DNA. And that's what they're trying to do now, is look at the DNA and match it up. And I've had the Royal Marsden have actually done and published my DNA, and I hope that helps. I hope that sort of everyone takes this DNA to their doctor and said, have I got some of this in me? Because it's all made up of all different strands. I don't understand it, but it's it's your DNA and how it's made up, how you actually respond to immunotherapy. I didn't have much PD-L1, which shocks everybody. I had about 1% of PD-L1. So I'm full of PD-L1 after immunotherapy treatment, which has shocked people. They said that they're learning by my body. So I've done 6 live biopsies so that they can keep looking at it and comparing me right through the immunotherapy, so that I help others that way.
Well, it is huge with immunotherapy. I mean, that is the cutting edge. And we have seen many dear people that we have known and loved that have tried it, and they haven't had the kind of response, Mavis, that you've had. So you're very lucky.
I know, I hate it because I light a candle when we lose a Meso warrior, and that hurts I can sit here and cry, I'm just sort of going to bed and someone will say, oh, so and so's just passed away, and I light the candle. I won't go to bed till I've lit that candle. It's a dreadful thing, like you said about Debbie. But we used to have fun here on the computer right into the early hours. And we used to laugh and joke, and I do miss her. Yeah.
So we've all been living with mesothelioma or the burdens that it's caused for, I mean, for me, it's 16 years. We've lived long enough that we've seen friends of ours have children that have gotten married, children have been born. It creates a really strong sense of the mesothelioma warrior community because we are all connected, and we're connected with the spouses and the partners, like with Ray. Ray, I love you just like I love Mavis, and you know it's very dear. And you know Emily, and you knew my dog Tilly, and I knew Louie, and our friendships are so wonderfully deep. And that's, I think that's, as Marilyn Amento says, that's the silver lining of all of us coming together. And technology has changed. When Alan was first diagnosed, I remember being at Cedar Sinai, and I had a tiny little phone. It was like a flip phone. It was a dumb phone, and I remember them telling me they thought Alan might have a mesothelioma caused from asbestos, and I had no clue that he was going to be diagnosed. We thought it was idiopathic, and I remember looking at my phone. It was before Google was a verb, right? Technology has changed, so there are patients here today, and we would encourage them to reach out, to join your group, Mavis. There's a lot of groups. They're lay-led. They're not led by a physician, but I think to feel isolated like we often do, and Ray and I share that the spousal part of this, when Alan first was diagnosed, I went to the garage and I sat on a box and turned the light off and just sobbed because there was nowhere to go in 2003. I was clearly alone and didn't have resources, and computer wasn't what it was. And then I'd come inside, and Alan knew me so well, like, you know, Mavis, and he'd say, Linda, are you crying? And I'm like, no, I think I just have an allergy. My eyes just got red. But the reality is being alone and isolated, I think, makes this diagnosis worse. So tell us a little bit about the support groups, because you've been, Mavis, you and Ray have written books and you speak. So let's focus on what can a patient or their family learn from your journey, and how have support groups helped you, both of you? That's you too, Ray. How have they helped?
You need a support group. You need to be able to go somewhere and meet other people that you can sit down and talk, and you each talk over all your different symptoms.
Fears,
Yeah,
worries.
yeah. So yeah, a support group is the most wonderful thing. And since we've been on Zoom, I've managed to go into so many support groups throughout the country that I never would have done by train. I wouldn't have travelled that far. So I've been able to get into everybody, and everyone welcomes me in, and we have a good old chat, and we talk about each symptom, each problem, and it's lovely.
So Harminder invited me to go to your LASAG meeting, and it was a very sweet group. There was probably 20 people, I'm thinking, there, and that's just one group. You have them all over the UK. So we don't, was a big country. We're scattered. So virtual has always been really the way to do it. With Alan, I just encouraged him to join a cancer group. It was lung cancer at the time, but just to be able to talk, because I would say, that's your language, Alan. You have to talk to somebody who speaks your language. I can listen, I can understand and care, but you want to talk about how you feel. So at that time in 2003, we didn't have all these different support groups. And you have Meso UK and Liz Dollison and all of the rest, and they're really lovely. There are a lot of people, and LASAG, I think, what's the acronym stand for?
London Asbestos support group.
Yeah, London Asbestos support group. Yeah.
So at the end of this conversation, we'll send an email out with your book and your groups and LASAG, so people can walk away with some knowledge. And I think the support groups, when I was able to go and meet the LASAG group, I mean, it's facilitated by nurses. It's great to have us as lay people talk about things, but it's also really important to have the medical knowledge, which we all need to have. And clearly, I think that's monumentally important. So let's see. Let's flip to, you find out that you worked with asbestos. You're feeling probably pretty sad and angry and guilty as your words were. You see the love of your life undergo treatment. So you might have been angry. That's how I felt. And then Mavis, you're undergoing treatment and you're worried, am I going to live? And you have a beautiful son and a family and friends all over. So you had to know you needed to do something to help with your head and your heart. So tell us a little bit, because you have a really beautiful story, but little bits and pieces. When did you first realize you wanted to do something with both of your stories to help prevent exposure? When did you learn, and what was the first thing you did?
Are you talking about our foundation?
No,
Or
before that.
before the foundation? I lost you.
Well, like Take Five. You started Take Five and BBC Stories. You started sharing your story, which really led to prevention.
So then I started to go into asbestos conferences. Is that what you mean? Yeah. And I met up with the Asbestos World, who backed me up 100%. They donate to my foundation so well. They're just a wonderful load of guys. I call them my boys. But what I realised was the youngsters, they're working with asbestos, and I just want them safe. And they don't always. They grow beards. So they don't shave. Um, their masks. They don't appreciate the mask, and the seal that they have to keep there. So I realised. So I started going around these conferences and showing them how to keep safe.
Yeah, and Ray, I know you went as a worker. When you share your story, I think it makes workers sit up straight in their chair and realize that you have to pay attention to the regulations, to the prevention measures that have been established, and you don't want to take any shortcuts. And I think the two of you share your story. You have some groups I love to work with, and one is IOSH.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they,
BOSH.
yep.
Yeah, there are some wonderful groups, and they sort of grown, and they sort of setting all the rules and regulations, and it's brilliant.
So when I first started ADAO with the Larkin family, prevention was almost, I don't want to say a dirty word, but it wasn't, everybody just wanted to fund research for a cure. And prevention to some felt like, why are you spending your time on that? And why you could just raise money for a cure. And I remember my late husband, Alan, and I, and of course, Doug Larkin and his wife, Kim, we would say, prevention is part of the cure. And I think it's taken us about, maybe you guys would think about it, it's been in the last decade where I think people like yourselves and others embrace prevention because we know it's part of the cure. And I know when you were talking before this conversation started, I mean, you're very passionate about prevention. And what's your message to communities about prevention? Let's talk about schools. Where are you with prevention with asbestos in schools?
Well, funny enough, I'm in the Asbestos Register UK. Want to every building and every school to be on a register, and what they've come up with is SMART, and it's such a wonderful thing that I back it 100%. I've even written a little piece for them to use because they have a barcode. I do it my simple way. They wording with it. They have a barcode on a building that they put their phone over. It's got an app on it that shows you then a picture of the whole building and exactly where all the asbestos is. So traders going in know exactly where it is, so they won't have an accident, which with their drilling or whatever they're doing, they know where that asbestos is. So I back them 100%. So it's called SMART, and you'll hear more of that. Now what they're doing, offering it free to some schools, because people don't take these things up, do they? They think it's all a load of money, and it's not. And they're offering it free. So I wish some schools would get together and start looking at this.
Well, we should work on that after this conversation because I think that's a great story. What we found in the United States, because some of the viewers here are obviously from other countries, we have not banned asbestos in the United States. Worse yet, we obviously import hundreds of tons every year. With my research that I haven't published yet, we will have imported, and Mavis and Ray, you're going to fall backwards. Good thing you have your suit on, Ray. We will have imported more raw asbestos in 2020 than we will have in 2019. That's that's just shocking and unacceptable. We have a bill in Congress. Obviously, it's named after my late husband, represents all the hundreds of thousands of Allens, and it's still difficult to move policy. So we're fighting hard. And everyone on this call, probably in the email, I'll put something about the Alan Reinstein Ban Asbestos Now Act. You in the UK, you banned asbestos. Is it 1999? I can't remember.
Yeah, 1999 we banned it. But that doesn't solve the problem, because the problem is that it's still in the buildings. The buildings get older and older, and it's crumbling. So you've got to start though with the ban, first.
Yeah, totally. So Toby joined the conversation a little bit late. She's quite active in Canada. Her daughter was exposed. I think they did an abatement incorrectly. So people who are exposed live with this fear. In Brazil, there's actually an ability to seek monetary damages if you're exposed, because you live with this worry. What I've had patients tell me in the Los Angeles area, when schools have done abatement incorrectly, or there's a disaster in California like the wildfires and others, when people are exposed, then they live in fear. Is that slight cough just a cough? Is that an early warning symptom? Now we have COVID, which obviously is a whole new terrible thing that we're dealing with. We can talk about that in a few minutes, but working on prevention, understanding what you folks do is hugely helpful, and there's a lot of resources. We're going to open it up to questions in a few minutes, but before we do this, let's look at the last couple of years of your life. You never did anything for fame or fortune, right, Ray? No fame or fortune?
No.
No. You're the most honest, sweetest couple, but you've had some lovely honors bestowed on you for your work. There are two in particular I'd like you to share. Mavis, if you'll share the one with the Queen, and then Mavis, you share the one with Kent, you can both share. So Mavis, what was it like to be nominated and win that prestigious award from the Queen?
I couldn't believe that one. It wasn't actually it was in the Queen's name, but it's the British Citizen Award, which is you're nominated by people, and so therefore it to me was the biggest honour, because it was the people that had nominated me and I didn't know, and it was a real surprise. So we did go up to Westminster, and I was presented with the medal.
And they only give out, 10 maybe for the entire country? You have the medal right there?
I was going to say, I have actually. I do keep it on the camera.
Oh,
so I'm very proud of that one.
As you should be. So in the wrap-up email that Nicole and I will write, we will make sure that we include a picture of you with that medal, because that would be very cool. Because there's people here that are learning about asbestos, trying to figure out their treatment paths, probably feeling scared like we have felt before, and maybe angry. And I think you guys, you do such a beautiful job raising awareness and building community. Okay, Ray, tell me about the time in Kent when you, don't look nervous, I won't tell any of your funny jokes yet. When you and Mavis went to the university, tell me about what it was like and how were you honored? Was it at Kent University?
Is in the cathedral. In the cathedral.
In the Gloucester Cathedral, yeah.
What happened there? Why were you honored, and how did they honor you?
They gave us both an honorary doctor's degree.
In the lawyer.
Yeah, in the lawyer's side, really. For all the work that we've been doing and raising awareness to public health. We had absolutely no idea until we had a letter dropped on the map, and I had to make a phone call to make sure it wasn't a joke, because it said basically the University of Kent would like to honour us with a doctorate degree for all your hard work. And I thought, yeah, sure, yeah, because to us, it's just something that we do. isn't it?
Yeah.
We work all day, like yourself, every day, just raising awareness. The last thought on our mind that was a reward or any acknowledgement. But anyway, the what happened on the day we arrived, we were dressed up with these big red robes and silly hats, and they presented us with the scroll and welcomed us to the fraternity. But we had to make a little speech afterwards. And my speech, as usual, had a jocular uh, surface to it. And I ended up by saying to the group of graduates that were behind us, there was something like 100 of them, if you can do anything in life that will help anybody else, it's okay to do that, because your rewards will come from strange places. And I held up the scroll that they'd just given us and I tapped it and I said, trust me, I know I'm a doctor. And the whole place erupted. Everybody stood up and they clapped. And afterwards, the dean said, you're the first couple that's been awarded a doctorate from the cathedral and the university. He said, and you are the first person that's ever had a standing ovation. And it was quite humiliating, really. But the whole morning was like a film set. And when we entered the cathedral, we were in the lead, the first, weren't we? We were led in.
We had to go in with the mayor.
With
I had
the-
to go in
yeah.
front of the mayor.
Yeah, everybody was behind us. And the music, it was the fanfares and the oh,
Yeah,
it was just absolutely stunning. It's a day we'll never forget.
yeah. It was beautiful.
I was so happy that you were recognized, especially in Kent, because it's so close to where you live, and for the great work you've done. Okay, so let's talk about a couple hard-hitting things. You started a foundation, and some people think about, like, I get sick, I should start a foundation, and then people kind of, having an organization or foundation is a lot of work, right? We can both raise our hands to a lot of work, like ADAO is. Tell us about the name of your foundation, when did you start it, and what is your purpose?
So we started the Mavis Foundation. I've lost where I put all that.
Oh, it must be what, 2, 3, 4, maybe
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
And so it is a lot of hard work, but I wanted to raise money to pay back. They've given me all my life in the NHS, and so I wanted to make sure that the foundation will pay not only for research and all that, but also to pay for the national health. And over the moon that last Christmas, I was able to raise enough money, and I've to have a Miss UK nurse in the Kent and Canterbury Hospital where we are, and where I've been, where I was at the first there. And the nurse that took that place was Tony, who you've met in Lasag. So I was absolutely over the moon that she did that. And then we was able to give a research grant to Simon Buxton in in Leeds. But because of COVID, that hasn't actually gone through. So and then this year, you know that we've got a Miss Warrior. She's 21, I think 22 now. I went to her wedding because she had an operation because she's got peritoneal. So I went to her wedding, and she saved eggs before the operation, and they set her ovaries back. The baby was born 2 days ago. little Henley.
Henley Road.
And so we've got a Miss Warrior baby. We've never had that before.
Now I saw that. She's beautiful. She's beautiful.
Oh, she's lovely. So,
So,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
those are the sweet stories. Okay, so let's get to a few little bullet points here. So we haven't banned asbestos. We're still importing it. Ray Nye, what would you like to tell President Trump about our policy of asbestos? Have to keep it clean, Ray Nye.
I couldn't read that anyway. I'm not only am I deaf, I'm half blind.
Then do it on your own.
Really, if he was to listen, banning it really is the cure, because if there's no asbestos, we're not going to have any more patients. Other than that, really, I wouldn't like to say, because it's obvious to me. If you have no asbestos, no one's going to get contaminated.
He loves it though. He thinks we should have used more. Mavis, you're so shy and demure. What if you could stare President Trump, who's on his way out, in the face, what would you tell him about asbestos? How did it change your life? And what do you want President Trump or President-elect Biden to do?
I want the new one to know there are 56 nations have banned asbestos, and the USA needs to be counted into this group. It's not until the USA bans asbestos that it can right the wrong and stop causing people so much harm and death from this awful mineral.
I would add to that, if I had to see him face to face and say to him, if you could stand in front of your loved one and watch her slowly die, would you still import this product?
I agree with that.
Yeah, and you know, they had it's not uncommon in the United States because we use so much of it. It was in one of the old, they call it the old executive building. It's considered the White House. They found asbestos in the ceilings and around. They vacated everyone, including Ivanka and Kellyanne Conway, to do the abatement. So when the government has the money and the power, they move everyone out, obviously. But there are many people that contact, I'm sure that you've had the same questions asked to you, Mavis and Ray, is people ask me like, hey, Linda, we don't have money to do abatement. So what do we do? Can we do it ourselves? What if we hire someone who's not licensed? What if so we have these kind of questions because it's very expensive to get rid of it in dollars and lives. So obviously we agree with you, both of you, that we need to stop importing and using and then clean up this mess. But we have a really tough part with global warming, which is a real thing. And the reality is our state in California has been on fire. And then so was Oregon and Washington. And because homes were built with asbestos, many homes and housing tracts, especially, not only, but especially up into the 1980s, when these homes are burned, then people go back to look for their trinkets and their treasures, and asbestos can still be found in the air, in the dust. Obviously, 9/11 is a tragic example of the residual mess that asbestos causes in structure. So we have a real problem. When it comes to ADAO, you're so dear. You always give us an opening welcome at our conference, and you should only know how disappointed we were this year to have to postpone the 2020, obviously because of COVID. Toby, who's on this call, keeps messaging me. It's very sweet. When are you going to have it? Are you going to have it? And people want to get together. I mean, that is the normal thing. So we're going to be having a meeting this weekend to figure out what happens. There are a lot of hardworking people at ADAO, people that give time, thought, dollars. Do you have an ADAO message that people like Dr. Richard Lemon and others would love to hear? Because you've seen, we started out so little and you've seen us grow. Do you have anything you want to say to ADAO?
The fact that I have seen you grow through these 12 years into such a big concern I keep thinking, oh, you've made it, you're there, you know, you've got you're in Congress, and I think you're going to get it passed, and you don't, and so frustrating. So I know how you must all feel. So just keep at it, keep fighting.
Do you think that your new president-elect will be more approachable than your current president in dealing with banning this?
Yes, I think for a few reasons. One is we have to clean up what's happened these last 4 years with President Trump's administration, with the damage the EPA has caused. Like, you guys remember the SNUR, it was a significant new use rule that the EPA tried to put out and claim it was a ban. So they've done a lot of shenanigans over the last 4 years. And President Trump is close with Putin. He also loves asbestos, and he owns a lot of buildings. So he's never been embracing of prevention and a ban. So I think with President-elect Biden, one is he's a real guy. People just call him Joe, right? He's just not like President Joe, he's just Joe. I think that he's going to be very sensitive to our work. His son died of, oh, there goes Mavis. His son died of a brain tumor. So he understands cancer and how it impacts the entire family forever. And he's very big on prevention and a cure. So I think we have his attention. His transition team has already asked us to provide a one-pager. So we are educating the Biden-Harris team. So yes, I think they'll be very supportive, but don't underestimate, because we're going to fight pretty hard in the next 70 days. We want to move the bill that we have now through Congress. We had a huge bipartisan vote a year ago. And Mavis, I'd love for you, if you want to write about it next week. We're coming upon the anniversary of when the bill passed out of committee. So we have everything together, but politics did get in the way in September, but we're hoping that that can be resolved and bring our bill up for a vote. We deserve to have the members of Congress vote on the bill and either send it forward or tell us what's wrong with it, and then take responsibility for killing the bill, because it's not okay just to delay and delay and delay. And you have to know this has been the hardest 2 years of my life, right? This has been really difficult, but you know what? There's no quitting. There's no crying in baseball. And Meso Warriors are very strong. So we will continue, and the support that you in the UK and throughout the world give us, like Barry Robson and others, people send me a lot of messages, and I know what we do matters in the US, but I know it matters around the world. So we're going to fight hard. Nicole, who you met earlier this morning, she does amazing work for us, and we have ADAO leadership and sponsors, and we're not giving up. But it's been hard. And so I think that next year will be easier, but I'm hoping we have a bill and Biden only has to implement it. I don't want to be futzing with this again. So in closing, is there anything that you want to tell a caregiver, Ray, that you've learned? Because we're going to come up against the end of this conversation. What's the biggest message if you were if their loved one was newly diagnosed? What would you tell a caregiver? How can they best care for themselves and their partner?
Well, I think one of the things that I've found lacking in all this, from a carer's point of view, is there's very little support for carers. We tend to be swept to the back in order to help, support and protect the victims in all this. But at the end of the day, taking all that from the victim's point of view into account, the carer suffers in a different sort of way. I don't think I've had a lot of support during my 12 years. Most of what I've done is I've just got on with what I can do and done my best to help Mavis and others, and put myself on the back shelf. But that doesn't help at the end of the day, does it? So I would say, if you're a partner has just been newly diagnosed, go to a support group, and in the background you'll meet others in your shoes, and maybe you can stick together and comfort each other if you like.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Mavis, what about you? As a warrior, as a patient, as a girl that doesn't give up, you held your doctors responsible, you did your own research, you managed your care frequently. If you're newly diagnosed, what do you want to tell that patient? What lessons have you learned that you could pass on?
I think number one is positive. Stay positive. A lot of people sort of give up. Don't listen to that diagnosis of 3 months, 6 months. They don't know. They don't know what you are and how you can fight this. And you do. You get on and you fight it. And that's the best description, really, because that's why we call it a warrior, a meso warrior, because we fight the disease. So yeah, but it is also find as much out as you can. Come on to Facebook where we are as meso warriors all together. Learn from us because we've been through it. And that's the way it is. It's just positive, I think.
2 years ago, when sorry,
I just hang up the phone. I don't even answer.
2 years ago when I was diagnosed, Mavis said to me,
That's lymphoma.
"Yeah, I haven't got meso. I've got lymphoma." Mavis said to me, "I hope you're not going to be one of those worries me types." She said, "You've got to be bloody positive all the time, all the way, and don't you dare get negative." And I took that advice on board. Now, to me, I don't even accept that I've been diagnosed. It's pain in the rear. I've got a scan on Monday again to see how things are progressing, but I just take it in my stride. Mavis will look after me.
Well, you two have endured a lot. I think that stress can induce cancer also. When Alan was just a few months, we didn't know he was going to be dying in May of 2006, but I was diagnosed with melanoma. So there I was in bed after surgery. Our daughter was just 13. So she has her father in bed with cancer. Then she has her mother in bed with cancer. And I think the stress of this is huge. So I'm with you to get a support group. So this conversation, I have to do one of Ray's funny things. Ray, you made me as happy as a cat with two asses today. So thank you so much for making this conversation happen. Ray always tells me these hysterical little, what do you call them? Like your expressions in the UK, but that one just still makes me chuckle. You say it with your British accent. It sounds so proper.
You're as pleased as a cat with two asses.
Thank you, Ray. So we'll put in the email about your foundation, about your book, about your work. Maureen's asking what can they do in Congress because she sadly shared her husband died 10 years ago from mesothelioma, or maybe 10 years ago, or had it for 10 years. I'm not sure. But let's all get together, not make this our last conversation, but more importantly, Ray and Mavis, I absolutely adore you. You're part of my family, and you put up with me and my crazy stuff and my last minute things, and you're so dear to support the US and ADAO, and I love you for all of that. So with a kiss, we'll catch up. There's a video on Facebook you can share, and we'll keep sharing. How's that sound?
Yeah, keep sharing. That's how you get the word around.
And you look so handsome, Ray, with your tie on. You're so proper.
Oh, right.
He put that on just for you.
Yeah.
I noticed that because with COVID, a lot of us hardly wear something other than pajamas. So you look so handsome.
To let you know, I do have trousers on.
I'm happy to know that. So when you have is your scan tomorrow, Mavis?
No. December the 30th.
Yeah, no, mine's Monday.
Because of COVID, they stopped my treatment, and in doing that, the meso has grown through my lung and onto my spine, and that's what we're now got to treat.
That's the first time I've heard it going to the spine. Is that for
It
you?
came out on the nerve, and it's gone onto the spine.
Are you in pain?
No, I'm so lucky, really. No, I'm
Well,
not.
you are sometimes.
Well, all right, I take paracetamol, you know, and yeah, in bed sometimes my back aches, but I don't want to feel it.
But
Yeah.
you're a warrior. You never cease to amaze me. So until we meet again in the UK after COVID, know that I'm your best girl on this side of the planet, and we'll continue on. So with love, thank you for sharing your stories. I know people are writing messages, and Toby
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Maureen wrote that he died 10 years ago after a 7-month battle. So we'll have Maureen share her story. So just having these conversations gives everybody the opportunity to connect and share, which, you know, more, and Claire is writing XOXO. So, okay, that's it. Go have your supper.
okay, then I will.
Kisses.
Okay,
Love
bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.